you can be how you want to be. And the future, as we look at possibility and probability, what changes in the realm of probability is when we grow new neural pathways.
Yes.
When we take a step to trust ourselves.
Yes.
When you take a deep breath and you're like, okay, this is scary, but I'm gonna try it anyway. That will help change every time you heal a little bit. Every time you are nicer to yourself. Not just getting the nails done, not just buying yourself cool art or whatever, but just not trash talking yourself.
Yeah.
We help open our realm of possibility.
Hello, Thrivers. Welcome back to Thrive with Sharon podcast. This is season 3, and I'm so grateful that you're all here. This has been an incredible season. We've had some amazing guests, and today we have Laurie Rivers. Laurie is really cool. She is a self-taught entrepreneur who has also been online since the beginning of the internet. She blended her love of technology, communications, and metaphysics into a passion-led business that helps people create meaningful, aligned careers and businesses using strength-based facilitation. After discovering astrology in 1995, Laurie began reading charts professionally, and in 1998, while passionately studying under astrologers like Joanne Vichtenberg, Jeffrey Wolf Green, and Robert Hand, and others, her sense of adventure and drive for self-actualization led her to study a variety of modalities in order to help others live their best lives for years. And Laurie warned people of the changing tides approaching in and after 2020, which drove her to learn how to craft and maintain businesses online. Laurie, I am so excited to have you today because just even in the pre-chat and in looking at some of your TikToks, I love the way that you really get into all of the nuances and all of the detailed versions and aspects of astrology. And so I just want to thank you for coming and showing up today, but also just thank you for following your passion when at a time that, especially at that time.
Yeah.
You
have to stay undercover.
I was around in that time too.
Right.
And yeah, and there were a lot of risks involved in proclaiming those beliefs and practices, right?
A lot of that at that time, even though I became a professional, I quickly became referral only, and I had kids. I had to be careful. So it wasn't safe, but I didn't stop. And people did think I was nuts. Like, you're just crazy. And I'm like, not for this reason. So, but yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me on the show, Sharon.
Oh, it's wonderful. I'm so happy that we connected. Carl, so I'm a holistic psychotherapist, and I, in my usual fashion, did very similar to you, right? So when I entered into the field, and even in my training and education, there really wasn't a lot of connection between the true essence of health and well-being. And astrology is a huge pillar. And if we go back to like the ancient mysticism, astrology was a huge factor in many different pillars of being well. And we do have some pioneers, especially like in the therapy field, and Carl Jung was one of them. And his very first sessions, he would sit down and read their chart, read his patient's chart. So I just get this energy and sense about you that you really like to get to the beginning of the beginning of the beginning and help to create a solid context and foundation. Can you talk to me a little bit more about like your actual practical application of like astrology to your clients?
Well, astrology is reflective of everything in life. And so as I tell my students, because I mentor and apprentice astrologers to move us forward, and to have good astrologers out there. you want to be a polymath. You need to know a lot about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So astrology itself is a container. It's a language. It reflects everything. Everything has a chart. Every symbol in the chart has 100,000 or more meanings. And consciousness is a spectrum. And I think when you look at what most people come in understanding is there's good and there's bad, there's duality.
Yeah.
But the world doesn't really, and neither does the universe, work purely in duality. It works in spectrums. And
Correct.
so my goal with my clients when we're in one-on-one, whether they're coming to me, and they usually come to me because they're at a crossroads or they're starting something, they might be looking for validation or reassurance. Am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
When I do parent-child charts, sometimes I'm working, in fact, most often I'm working with parents who want to be really good parents to their children
Mm.
and not sure because maybe they butt heads personality wise with the child. What
Mm-hmm.
are they learning from the experience? Some people do come when they've had health challenges or have been diagnosed with an illness, and I'm not a medical professional. I think that's something people need to understand. We're not diagnosticians. um, when I am blessed with a person coming to me because they're at life's end, and
Mm-hmm.
I am often, that's usually who comes to me. It's about how do we make the most of this time. So it is dependent wholly on the client and their desire. Okay.
Right.
A natal chart is different. We just tell you about you, and my apprentices do the natal chart readings. That's telling you about you. That's not a consultation. It's an in-depth, deep dive into your psyche. But in the consultations, you have to speak with me. It's not a
Mm.
psychic reading where I read your mind or give you evidentiary mediumship information, which those are all valid.
Sure. Yes.
In fact, I have several of my astrologers studying evidentiary mediumship to improve their trust with their intuition. I've
Sure.
studied many of those modalities as well. But we have a conversation. So if it's a young person about to leave college, you know, what route do they take? And mom and dad are saying, go be a nurse, go be a doctor, do something practical. And in some cases, that's exactly right. Mom and dad are really tuned in. In some cases, they're better off being a mortician, better off being
Right.
an entrepreneur, better,
Right.
And so instead of saying, oh, that's a horrible idea, why would you ever do that? I'll gently work with them, because if you're 20 or 21, it might be hard to say no to mom and dad. You might still be financially reliant on them. And so be like, how does it feel to you? Because when I look at your chart, I'm not seeing a lot of resonance there. Have you considered these things? So there's a little coaching element
Mm.
included, because as a young astrologer, I had a lot of hubris and I would give edicts. And funny enough, that didn't work out very well for me or the client. So they
Yeah.
didn't teach us how to run a client session back in those days.
No.
So I have a lot of other cross training to
Sure.
serve a client better. I know that was a lot of words, but it really depends on why someone's coming to me.
Yeah. So I think in any kind of relationship, especially when you're providing a service, it's all about what the person's needs and goals are, right?
100%.
And so you could be the best, I don't know, basket weaver there is, but if I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to learn how to make a basket, then we're going to have tension and we're going to have frustration and probably
Mm-hmm.
resistance in our relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
I know
Mm-hmm.
that's a very extreme kind of a situation, or example,
Mm-hmm.
but the context of every successful um, growth is
Mm-hmm.
always about the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we could
Mm-hmm.
be as successful financially or, numbers wise in a business or,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, but if we don't have healthy relationships and if we're not really connecting
Mm-hmm.
in ways that are meaningful, then we feel empty. And I see this happen
Yeah.
all the time in my practice,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
I work with high performers and which I am one of them, right? Recovering high performer, maybe. But it we it it's I now say I'm in the business of building relationships, right? And mentoring healthy relationships. And so I love the fact that you really take that integrity and you're very conscious in the way of carrying it out. Um, and that kind of leads me into your thoughts on like, how do we, because we're living in a world where astrology is very popular right now, even though there's many people that still think it's black magic, right? Or taboo or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, how though can someone know where to look or how to choose a practitioner for themselves?
I talk a lot about that on my podcast. And I've talked about it on TikTok as well. That because I didn't really go on there to build an audience. I went there to protest, but back in 2020. But I grew a following. So I think there has to be some kind of record, just because somebody says they can do something without evidence, you're not going to know. If you're looking at any professional, okay, whether
Yeah,
it's a therapist, I don't know, getting my tires fixed, I go look at the Yelp reviews, a
yeah.
restaurant if I'm in a new city. So referrals, asking other people, having testimonials. It's why I put a lot of proof of work out there. It's why I give political predictions, mundane predictions. It's not my favorite kind of astrology. My favorite kind is helping people self-actualize. But it's really hard to miss accuracy when I give a public prediction a year ahead of it happening and it happens to the month. Then people are like, oh, well, yep, she knows what she's talking about. So you have to look through and you must use discernment. So you must use discernment. You can't just, the other thing people will come to us for is that we will have the answer. People don't like to own their power. Even high performers sometimes, and I get
Oh,
plenty. They'll come in
100%.
and like, you tell me, and I'm like, no, you tell me, because you have
Yeah,
these options. You could do it this way, you could go this way, you could have a lot of times people come to me for their businesses as well, because that's
sure.
my other passion. Once I figured it out, I was like, oh my gosh, this is fun. Let's help people do this. Make it a game. But I'll be like, well, should I have a book? I'm like, should you? Your third house is great, but you don't. And third house for listeners is writing. Ninth house is publishing. Okay, so the ideas are the third house. The ninth house, the opposite house, is getting them out in the world. They have a great, they may not like writing or writing under pressure. But have you thought of a podcast? Oh, well, I've thought about it. Oh, well, here are some resources to check out. Investigate it. It's good timing, whether you do it this way, or this way. But I'm not going to tell you.
Right.
I'm
Right.
going to
Yeah.
help you.
Yeah.
Because if I take your power, now you'll have a solid plan by the time we're done with the meeting. It's not like you won't. But I will not dictate someone's life to them. And I saw that a lot as a young astrologer, even from older astrologers. I mean,
Sure.
they had almost like a god complex.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a slippery slope because you get a lot of information. You're well aware, it's easy to slip into that. And you might know they can and they have that potential. There might be other factors going on you don't know. You might be, it's not your job. Maybe their path it's a 5-year journey. And you can see that through transits, So, but
Right. Yeah.
I'm not dictatorial. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, because even in evidential, like
Mhm,
even in evidential work and being
mhm,
psychic,
mhm,
I never wanted to share that aspect
mhm,
because I didn't want people to come and say, can you please tell me XYZ about me or
mhm,
person? Should I marry them? Should I not? Do they love me? Do they not? When am I
mhm.
finding my twin flame? Am I never meant to be in a relationship? Ba, 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 ba. Um, you know, will they come back to me in 5 years? Some medium told me this, and I'm like, I think that is, I think that, and you tell me, I'm really curious what your thoughts are in this with astrology, because it's something that I always kind of bounce around in my mind. I think we're in such unprecedented times. And I know that sounds so cliche, but it really is. We're just in
Here
the
we are.
enormously quickly transforming times that we're also discovering our own power, and we're also
Mhm,
discovering the power of transformation to heal any
mhm,
all things, right?
mhm.
And which also means that if I'm changing, that means because the earth is changing. And if the earth is changing and I'm changing, then other people are changing. So the predicted outcomes really are so dependent on the collective rising, right?
Yes and
So
no.
so
Yes
yeah,
and no.
perfect.
Mhm,
Okay, good. So
mhm,
I want to hear more about that, because
mhm,
I really do believe I have a belief that we really can change the outcome of things
mhm.
if we were to allow ourselves to explore it in a more um, open-minded, healthy, pure way. But tell me your thoughts on that.
And consciousness expresses in a multitude of ways.
Yeah.
And if we only look at things in positive and negative,
Yeah.
you've narrowed the realm of probability. An astrologer's job is to look at possibility and probability. In mundane aspects, okay, when we're looking at mundane astrology,
Mhm.
we often look at the collective consciousness, which it has a pretty low bar. Okay. The general collective isn't usually pretty high vibe, but it doesn't take a lot of people to raise that. We've
Sure.
already avoided some of, like, if people think 2020 was bad, it could have been 10 times worse. I was looking at that for 20 some years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was warning people for years, massive systemic change is coming. It did come, but we didn't have global thermonuclear war. We still have climate change. That's still there. You know,
Mhm.
we we can address it. We're going to
Mhm.
have to mitigate. This may be exactly the crisis humanity needs to grow.
Mhm.
I see us making it, you know. Um the can you see my true love? Can you see my twin flame? That is really a distraction in life. Our relationships are important, but until we start loving ourselves, no, honey, you ain't gonna find your twin flame. That's a marketing device from 2012 on Facebook, honeys. That is not historically a real thing. You probably have more than one soulmate in your life. One of those is right here with me,
Ah,
my
you're
dog,
so cute, little
Malcolm,
mush.
right?
Hi,
I've had
Malcolm.
some of our greatest sparring partners are our soulmates.
Mhm.
Not everybody who's in a soul contract with you is to get along. Some of the biggest jerks out there you agreed to meet to grow. Doesn't mean it had to be traumatic. It doesn't ever have to be a certain way. But our souls will use any pathway for growth. And nothing will dissuade the soul from growth.
Mm.
So do I believe the future is not set in stone? That's why I'm a progressive evolutionary astrologer.
Mm.
I'm not a determinist. And that's why I teach and I mentor and progressing understanding. Because notice I put progressive in front of evolutionary,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because in the evolutionary world, it's still all down to reproduction. I'm like, right, there's a little more than that to it. Um,
Yeah.
we have to change our ideas out of a binary system of ones and zeros and good and bad. And
Yes.
this, you can be how you want to be. And the
Mhm.
future, as we look at possibility and probability,
Mhm.
what changes in the realm of probability is when we grow new neural pathways,
Yes.
when we take a step to trust ourselves,
Yes.
when you take a deep breath and you're like, okay, this is scary, but I'm gonna try it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That will help change every time you heal a little bit, every time you are nicer to yourself, not just getting the nails done, not just buying yourself cool art or whatever, but just not trash talking yourself.
Yeah.
Um, we help open our realm of possibility. The kinder you are, because I haven't met a self actualizing person yet who wasn't very community oriented, who didn't notice, oh, I'm not an island. I need to connect to other people. We need to be interdependent.
Mm.
So, yes, we can change the outcome, but it's still going to be in the same kind of polarity. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure. Yes, absolutely. I think that, as you're talking, I love everything that you said. And as you were talking, I was just kind of in my mind envisioning. So many of us have our own starting point, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's always at a different kind of part on this spiral staircase.
Mm-hmm.
And there is just as much to deconstruct as
Mm-hmm.
there is to construct. So when we my experience is at this point in my own personal journey, as well as being a beautiful, like just witness to so many others, is that we get so enamored with wanting information
Mm-hmm.
because we think that we're missing information, which is really part of the hypervigilance that's caused by some of the stuff from our past of old programming, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we think, oh gosh, so I want to be more. So that means I need to add more. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we're adding all of this stuff into our bodies and our systems, and we can look at
Mm-hmm.
ourselves as system oriented, right? And
Mm-hmm.
from quantum metaphysics lens, right? So we're all just,
Absolutely.
right.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So we're just adding more in, but what we're doing is we're heavying the load, and we're still seeing it through the same
Yeah.
distorted lens of
Yep.
that false programming. So for me, I see it as like these kind of like peaks and valleys, or just kind of the spiral staircase, like I said before, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like
Mm-hmm.
we're on this journey and we're perfectly placed wherever we are and however we
Yep.
are in this journey. But part of being able to be progressive and evolutionary is to realize that part of the foundation and the dirt that we're standing on isn't necessarily the dirt that we thought it was.
Exactly.
Right. So
Exactly.
not that we need
Mm-hmm.
to know exactly what it is, but we have to be
Mm-hmm.
open to the possibility that maybe it isn't what we think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that we can empty ourselves so that we can actually be more and more open to the infinite possibilities of any and all things, as opposed to the one thing that we're
Yes.
afraid of, or the one thing that we want to have
Mm-hmm.
happen. Because if we don't have it
Mm-hmm.
happen, then we're afraid of what our existence is going to be.
Exactly.
So I I love the fact that you're talking about self-trust and intuition. I
Mm-hmm.
love the fact that you're really bringing all of that into play, and I hear it
Mm-hmm.
throughout our entire conversation, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's always turning it back to
Mm-hmm.
the focus of the self. Um so this obviously brings us right into, not so obvious for some people, but for us it like kind of brings us into this conversation about like something bigger and greater than ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the fact that you refer to it as spirituality. That's probably more common speak for me as far as, spirituality as opposed to religious dogma. But tell me more about how you introduce this to people and how you really breathe that into your body of work.
People either well, I talk about it all the time, like on my live streams or on my podcast. And that's kind of like by the time people come to me, they probably listen to me yap on a lot. Um, my way of describing kind of things is in the all that is the things that are greater. We have, first of all, as humans, a 1 in 400 trillion chance of being human on this planet.
Yeah.
That intrinsically makes you unique and special. Those are incredible odds.
Yeah.
And look at you, you're here. You are
Yeah.
made of the very atoms and particles and subparticles and quarks and neutrinos and bosons, as the sun, as the red dwarfs and the moons of Jupiter. You are made of the same thing, but organized differently.
Yeah.
And yet you are here
It's a miracle.
on this planet
Yeah.
to have an experience in physicality.
Mhm.
So as an astrologer, we tend to study a couple branches, right?
Yeah,
There's lots of branches of astrology.
sure.
One of those is esoteric astrology, and
Yeah.
that understanding that we're here to spiritualize matter, that we're integrating the wholeness within this singularity of being an individual while connected to everything else, not just people, but the rocks, the planet, the dirt, as you said. And to have these experiences in a range. We came for the roller coaster ride. We came for the roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
That's what I talk about all the time. To take away the charge of the Calvinist approach in our society, the deep rooted Calvinism that good things happen to good people because they're blessed by a deity, and bad things happen because they're not blessed by a deity. And that's very ingrained in American culture.
Yeah.
Um, because it's not true. There's no reasons. Sometimes there's no reasons other than that's how it played out.
Right.
And the soul uses every experience. It doesn't get sullied. It doesn't get beat up. It
Yes.
doesn't get ruined. It doesn't get tarnished. It doesn't get punished. It doesn't get a reward. The reward is the experience. Bad things don't have to happen for you to grow. They're often a catalyst for growth. That's a very different thing. And I think it's so important for people to know that. So, on a deep level, that's the mission, to show the connectivity. Everybody wants unity, consciousness, and Shangri-La and Kumbaya, and that's not going to happen. Understanding we're all intrinsically connected and really at one from a subatomic level, that's the point. The individual bumping up against one another, it's kind of like bumper cars at an amusement park.
Yeah. I love how you said spiritualizing matter. I think that's probably the first time that I've really heard that and it's landed
Mm,
with me. Like it really like
mm,
landed.
mm,
And so paraphrasing what you've just shared and so eloquently so that this great all,
mm,
right? The any
mm,
and the all
mhm,
is what we are of and from, right?
mhm,
And so all of the particles of all of the things, and here we are.
mhm,
And so from another spiritual lens, it's like if we do believe in God or we believe in goddesses or source or whatever
mhm,
it is, this great all is so infinitely wise to know that it is infinite and will
mhm,
ever always shall be infinite. And so in
mhm,
order to be infinite, it places a little bit of itself in us to
mhm,
continue to carry that on. So
mhm.
we are all one in the sense that we are all part and particle of this bigger and greater
Yeah,
existence. But like you said, that doesn't mean that it's going to just be easy
no. Nor
for
does it
us.
have to always be hard.
And nor does it always have to be hard either.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
I think that it's where, so I come from a harmony lens, right? So everything
mhm,
must be in coherence with one another, right? So
mhm,
in other words, there that binary approach of good or bad, or I
mhm,
always believe that it's always just the spectrum. It's
mhm.
that's why I have my program is called Prismatic, right? So
Oh, I love that.
right.
Perfect.
Right.
Right?
Um, and so we all get to in this physical expression, we all get to live out many different aspects of self, right?
Yeah.
And that if we only want everything to be good, then we're really going to be running all of the time from the bad.
And very disappointed.
Right. And then we're going to always have that sense of not enoughness and not good enough and wearing a mask because our belief is that if we're not all good and if things aren't always easy and if things aren't, all one all of the time, then there must be something wrong with us because everybody else over there is all one, right? Because we have that whole kind of, FOMO or imposter syndrome, whatever it is, right? But then we also have the other aspect where it's just like, well, life's always terrible, so I better not even just try and do anything, right?
Right.
So either aspect,
They're both toxic.
they're both reflections of the same energetic vibration, but just on different ends of the polarity.
Ends of the polarity. Yep.
Right? So to come to that position of harmony and coherence means that I can exist with any and all things, and any and all things just want to exist within me.
Yeah.
So how can I make my adjustments to be in harmony with that? And so I can only imagine like how absolutely eye-opening and awakening and blissful that would be to be able to really have that very pragmatic and transparent conversation with you, looking at
Your chart.
your information, but also the information of the earth and the world and all of that. Like, wow, that intersect must be really cool.
It is, and it's an honor and a privilege to do it with people, to settle questions inside of someone that they've had for years. And it's not like I sit there and I'm like, okay, I know they have this question, or they even told me this question. They might be asking me about one area of life, and just through the weaving of the reading, that comes out, and they're like, wow, I've been wondering about that my whole life. That just clicked. That just freed me. I get it now. That's an honor to be part of that process. Because it's a walk. Life is a walk. You're not ever going to have it perfect. Nobody's here to get it right.
Yeah.
There's no getting it right. So
what you just said that very just said it, but that is it's such a profound truth, right? There is no right, there is no wrong. And I'm sure you get this all the time, please just tell me if I'm right. Like, should I have done this? Should I not have done this? Just tell me if I'm right. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. And I do literally have clients that get angry with me because I'm like, you already know that I'm not going to say right or wrong, because there is no right or wrong in any of this. There just is. It is. So sit with is.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, you can't do anything. No, once the decision is made and you're there, then now what?
Right.
Now what? But it's already been made. And what did you learn? That's one of my favorite questions. What did you learn from it?
Right.
You're learning or you're growing. There's no failure until the body fails, but it's not even a failure at that point, right? Because it's just your show is Thrive. Failure to thrive means it's you're on to the next. You're thriving elsewhere in energetical form.
Right.
There's no failure, and it does take courage to unpack your social cultural conditioning, and that's something most people come over time. It's like I don't hit somebody who's brand new to me. Like, here, let's deconstruct you automatically, rip all the layers off.
Right, of course. Yeah.
We move slowly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love that you talked about deconstructing social norms and the like. I have two questions and I'm going to throw them at you and you decide which one you want to answer. So the first one is, I know that you had a lot of predictive things, especially towards the pandemic, and we're not politicizing this. We're not, but this is just strictly, from an astrological lens, right?
Yep.
From a spiritual lens, I also had my own experiences with this. And so I'd love to hear your take on that. Actually, I'm not going to ask the other question. I just want to hear your take on that. I want to hear your take
on the pandemic.
Yeah, just the predictive factors and how you could see through your astrological and spiritual lens, like that this was all coming.
So what I didn't see was a pandemic. What I saw was massive systemic change. So I just want to be really clear. One of my colleagues saw the pandemic. What I saw was massive systemic change, because on my own, as Laurie the astrologer, my favorite is to get into deep metaphysics and do inner alchemy. Okay, so mundane, I was taught because I was taught classically. I'm a classically trained astrologer. But in 1996, one of my mentors, who was in his 90s, said, yeah, his name was Cosmo, believe it or not. For real. I knew these cool, like, here I was, this executive, and then studying astrology, like, don't let anybody know. But anyway, Cosmo said, you need to look at the years 2020, 2025, and 2030 and 2035. I won't be alive, but you will, and you have children. And I looked at 2020 and my jaw dropped, and I looked at successive months, and I was like, oh my God, no, I have a degree in international relations. I specialized in US Middle East policy, minored in anthropology. And I'm going, oh my God, my worst cases are usually worse than most people can imagine on worst case scenarios.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there with a 2-year-old and a newborn baby.
Wow.
And I'm like, how do I raise my children to be ready for this? And what was I thinking? But I always wanted to be a mom, so that was perfect. And they're beautiful soul connections. So I had to put it down for a while. I'm not going to lie. By 2002, I had to put that chart down because it was driving me crazy. The fear, the worry, the doubt. I was reading very arcane metaphysical literature, trying to get any clue I could into that time. So I knew with Pluto and Capricorn and the energy around that, because we also had Saturn and Jupiter. That was special. We hadn't seen that. Like, if Pluto had been in our consciousness before 1930, and it was not, we would not have seen that energy at play since the Bronze Age.
Yeah.
And so what I knew as somebody who had to study how societies form, how civilizations form, how humanity works politically, I was very worried. I saw the supply chains going. I saw it. And so my kids have medieval skills. My kids have modern tech skills. I knew tech wouldn't go away. It might have blips. I did not raise them normally, and everybody thought I was this weirdo fringe person. In 2020, I got a lot of texts going, oh, you were right. And I literally blew up my own life in 2016, like changed everything. I got divorced. I even risked the relationship with my children because I'm a very giving mother. And I was like, well, we're grown. I'm still here, but I have to do my part and I have to be ready. And if I don't do this now, I won't be ready then. And again, you're crazy. So I risked everything. It was the smartest move. It was very scary. Very scary to do this thing and be that selfish woman and let go of everything.
Yeah, we were on the same timeline.
Oh, haha. I figured you and I have some cross things going. Well, look at us now. We did just fine.
And so are our children.
And they're just fine. And they talk to might talk to me. Do you talk to you? It worked. It was scary though.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. And it wasn't just a one and done either. I mean, it just like, that was just like the little tip of the one thing. And then, just a huge, yeah, just an awakening of different words, but I call it breaking it wide open,
Yes.
you know?
It was big. It was
Yeah.
big. So 2020 didn't seem so bad. I know that's
Seriously.
terrible, but it didn't. I was like, oh, this is way better than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And it was still very, very scary and
Yes.
uncertain. And I do believe it's been mismanaged. I mean, I have a cold. This isn't COVID, but I am COVID cautious. We still have to continue to be mindful with our
Yes.
health as we move
Yes.
forward. We have Saturn in Pisces. And so you want to be diligent. That's a transit happening right now, the moving planet. So we still need to be cautious. I think people have been rather cavalier, and we need to be considerate of other people as well. So.
Right, exactly. That's the collective consciousness coming in, right? And again, if we're wanting everybody to believe one thing, then we're divisionary in our thinking.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's so important for us to again just find that peace and harmony with the existence as it is now, and not create illusions. I think that, one of the things that we've all been really, one of the things that was unearthed by Uranus in 2020, right? So was the unearthing of all the things that were hidden, right? The great awakening, the great revolutionary. And some of that we're still, and we will be for a long time, healing this living life in relationships with illusion, right? AKA in clinical terms like codependency, right? Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think it's so important for us to really get to that point where we are in coherence, so that we can really truly be and live in truth as much as possible, because then that's one of the safest ways that we can exist in this world.
Yeah. And funny thing, truth is subjective and everybody has their own lens. So accepting that somebody's truth isn't always going to match up with your truth.
Right. Yeah.
All those lessons.
I know. Lots of growth, lots of potential growth lessons for sure. For sure.
Well, just sometimes, yeah. Anyway.
Go ahead. No. I interrupted you.
Oh, it's okay. That thought just went through the cold.
Okay. Laurie, I just feel like I could talk to you about so many other, like, just real deep, lots of depth in our conversation. One last question with regard to kind of the time that we're in. So Uranus is in Taurus, and it became direct in Taurus, I guess, in the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, right? So,
well, it went direct in Taurus. What you mean? Did you mean it ingressed in Taurus, or it went direct?
Uranus in Taurus became
January
of this year.
Yeah, January.
Okay. So how long will it be
direct?
Yeah.
Until here, let me look. I have a little cheat sheet that I make myself so I can look up all these things. It should be going retrograde in like August.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. July is a really interesting month. Mundane ones. This month is just the setup month. I have to do it with humor because I think that's the only way to get through it. It's like people are like, you're laughing about that. I'm like, what else do you do? We're still here. Uranus goes retrograde on August 28th of
Okay.
this year. Yeah. And
Okay.
it'll go direct again in January. So that's been its pattern. All the outer planets go direct, retrograde about 4.5, 5 months. And Jupiter and Saturn are retrograde yearly. Sun and Moon don't retrograde. Retrograde isn't that big of a deal, by the way. Modern people put way more emphasis on it than it ever was emphasized.
Yeah.
Not direct does not mean good. In fact, more mayhem happens when all the planets are direct than when retrograde. Retrograde's kind of like the brakes are on a little bit.
Right. Right.
Which is nice. Direct doesn't mean good. Retrograde doesn't mean bad. It's an illusion because the planets don't do the cha-cha in their orbits in the sky. They're constantly in the forward motion.
Yeah.
But from a geocentric point of view, an earth-based point of view, when we look up, we see them moving backwards, and our perceptions shape our reality. So it's real to us. And astrophysicists love to come at us for that one. I'm like, it's real to us. We're the one. You know what? I'm not talking about astronomy. So
Right.
talk about astrology. It's different. That's really not bad. I actually tend to look forward to those big planets. Like Neptune's going to go retrograde this month. I love that. That's when all the tea gets spilled, all the celebrity scandals come out, all the political scandals. Get your hot tea, get your cookies. And it's where you as an individual will have more clear seeing. Because when Neptune is retrograde, you have clearer sight. And that I'm talking about third eye sight, not eyeball sight.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to leave us with to chew on for the rest of the year, and how we can continue to honor our journey and astrologically speaking?
From a metaphysical perspective, I would say remember that that the desire to be virtuous is as deep a shadow as murderous rage, and often more toxic. And so that desire to be seen as a good and holy person, blameless or perfect, is often in your way and harming you, because you're judging yourself, because you're putting yourself to a standard you cannot meet. And that is robbing us of a greater version of you. From an astrological perspective, it's a bumpy ride this summer, and it'll be really easy to be distracted by the news and social media. Don't fall prey to the outrage machine. It's really, I don't care where people are on their belief spectrum.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't care if they're left, right, or in between. Turn off the news unless it's directly impacting you. And I mean directly, it's affecting you, your loved ones, right near where you are. If it happens on the other side of the country or 6 counties down, that is not yours to own. Stop owning other people's burdens. You cannot help from that space. You cannot contribute from that space of owning that. There will be things that happen. And there will be traumatic things that happen on a global scale, not just in the United States. But you cannot help if you're in the misery with people. You have to cultivate discernment and detachment so that you can either give aid or take care of people in your community. Focus on your communities, because it's kind of like each one teach one, or if we each take care of our little patch, we can interconnect in small, tightly connected cells.
Yeah.
We have to have that, because going forward, there's a lot of, doesn't mean the world's going to end or the apocalypse is here. That's not what I'm talking about. But look at where the supply chain is still where it's at. We have climate change. I don't care how it started. I'm not getting into that debate. I'm a Cancerian. I'm just going to say I want it taken care of. I'm a mom. I don't care who started it. We do have wild weather. And so growing food indoors, sharing with your neighbors, getting to know your neighbors if you can, and helping people who need the help. You don't have to
Mm,
give everything you've got, but even
mm,
giving a smile, being kind.
mhm.
We need more of that energy going on because it's going to be very contentious. So it's
Yeah.
easy to get up into arms because the nodes move into Aries. They square off with Pluto on July 12th, all through July and August. Be easy to want to fight. It's much braver to love.
Oh, that's a perfect way to end this segment.
Mhm.
So good. Thank you, Laurie, so much for being here today. And I know that our community is just absolutely going to love this conversation. If you're just finding this podcast, please make sure that you subscribe and you leave a review. And also, if you're just finding Laurie through this podcast, please make sure that you follow her on social media, TikTok, as well as her website is going to be listed here in our show notes.
Mhm.
Um, and Laurie, I believe also to any of the listeners is going to provide a 20% discount off of her
Yes.
services. How would
Yes.
they go about receiving that?
I'm gonna give it. You can put it in your show notes if you want. I don't care.
Okay.
Just use save 20%, and I'll type it in our chat here. You can see it.
Okay. Save 20%.
Yep, save
Perfect.
20%. And that works on classes as much as it works on readings. So I teach a lot of, I'm doing the year ahead for 20. Well, that'll already have been done by this comes out.
Yeah.
So 2024 year ahead. Next one happens in November. But
Okay. Cool.
yeah, yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
Well, Laurie, thank you so much for coming and joining. And thank you, everybody, for listening today. I hope that you just feel your heart filling as much as mine did today in this conversation. And until the next time, peace and love, and be well.